Hey, you're listening to the Up Rev Ninja Podcast, and this is episode number 62, and I'm your host, Tom Hudson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Up Rev Ninja Podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining us. This show is produced each week with the single intent of discovering the tips, tricks, hacks, and lessons learned from our guests that has catapulted them into living the best version of themselves. Join your host, Tom Hudson, as he continues his search for the best methods to up-rev his life. Now, let's dive into the show.
Hey, today's guest on the Up Rev Ninja Podcast is Denny Jones, Denzel. He's an in-field dating coach at schoolofattraction.com.au, Australia's largest dating coaching service for men. They execute professional and long-term programs designed for men who respect women and deserve more from their dating lives. Hey, today on the Up Rev Ninja Podcast, I've got Denzel Jones. How you doing today, man?
I'm very good. Very good.
I'm super stoked to talk to you. You know, I was listening to an interview that you were on there, and it talked about how you hit rock bottom, and it kind of touched on your backstory a little, but not enough. Why don't you just tell us like who you are and how you got to where you're at today?
Well, yeah. Okay. So my backstory is this: I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up in Sydney, Australia. My parents, my mother's Colombian, my father's English. A pretty average sort of middle class upbringing. We lived on the sunny northern beaches, which is a beautiful place to grow up here in Sydney. But I got into my teenage years, got out of high school, and I fell into a relationship, and it went for a few years. It got a bit toxic after a while, and so that split. But then I found myself continuously in this pattern of falling into relationships, and I felt and not able to get out of them, in the sense that I felt like maybe I didn't have much control. I felt like maybe the girls chose me and not the other way around. So when it came to actually letting go of the relationship, I wasn't too keen on doing that. And I think that came from a mentality of scarcity. And so that sort of was a repeat behavior for me from relationship to relationship, but they were very long relationships, until about 4 years ago. There was a relationship that I was in. It was a very fiery relationship, but I tried to get out of it a couple of times. The waterworks would come, and then I'd be like, okay, let's give it another shot.
Yeah.
But then you find out that person ended up cheating on you anyway. So it was a kind of kick in the teeth, and that really sort of rocked me. It's, you give so much to a person, and you feel like, the initial reaction is to blame that other person. But I think at that point I realized that just through experience and in my past, that I personally had to take responsibility. So I use that kick in the guts, the kick in the teeth, as I said, and sort of channeled that energy into going, well, this is my rock bottom. This is my version of that. Things are never going to be like this ever again. And I was pretty stubborn with that fact. And so I put my hand up and said, I probably need to go to a men's development course or something of the like. Coincidentally, I found through internet media, I found an interview with a man called Damien Decker, and he was the owner of he is the owner of School of Attraction. Now, School of Attraction is pretty much a school for guys who want to get better with their love lives. Their tagline is "Get the girlfriend." But from what I read, it wasn't like I don't know if you've ever read the book The Game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I dabbled in that stuff before. I think most guys try and get a bit of information as to what that is, because there's some psychological learnings there that can be taken on board. But it was always like I always felt like I didn't feel good about applying most of that stuff, mainly because it wasn't me. It just wasn't me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to do like magic tricks and do all this other stuff that was kind of weird and not congruent with who I was to get what I wanted. And reading the book as well, like the key protagonist was what was his name? Mystery.
Yeah.
He tried to commit suicide 3 times in that book. So I just thought to myself, well, that guy is fundamentally unhappy, right? And look at and everything that he's doing, I think he's feeding that, yeah, because he's created this alter self, right? And he's pretty much said to himself, for me to be successful in this space, I need to be somebody else, and that was doing him the world of damage. So that wasn't for me. But well, yeah, when I heard about School of Attraction, I was just like, wow, these guys were like, like my boss had written a book called Sincere Seduction. So sorry, Damien had written a book called Sincere Seduction, and I read that, and it was just about owning yourself and not having to be anybody else to get what you want. You just, there's a few sort of tactical, tweaky things that you could do and to really sort of better yourself and get that girlfriend. So I put my hand up and said, yes, I need help. I did the course. I spent $4,500 on the course. It was a 13-week intensive. I didn't have the money at the time, but it was a payment plan, so that was okay. And I sort of I said to myself, wow, this is the biggest investment you've made in yourself ever. So you better push yourself. And so I did, and I pushed myself well beyond the course because they have a sort of a gradual, ongoing coaching system after you finish the course online. And I pushed myself for about 2 years.
Wow!
I went out 2-3 times a week and just to practice. Obviously, I weaved it into my lifestyle, and things just really blossomed up after that. I felt like I was a bit more confident with who I was in that space, and I wasn't afraid to ask for what I wanted, which was pretty much the biggest setback I've had my whole life. I was kind of eventually I was a bit of a pushover. I was a bit of a nice guy, yeah. So I'd regained that control, and 2 years into it, Damien called me up and he said, I've been seeing what you've been doing online, because I have a sort of a journal of sorts, and he's like, would you like to become a coach? So then I did the coach's course, which is probably the most grueling thing I've ever had to do, under the microscope for proficiencies and whatnot. And now I've been coaching for a few years.
Oh wow, man, that's pretty awesome. It's so messed up how we take these. We hit our proverbial rock bottom and how we turn it around, and now you're 180 degrees different.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is. Look, I have to say, it was the best thing I ever did was taking responsibility. Knowing that it's so easy to, when you feel that pain, to lash out at other people and say you're the problem, you're the issue or somebody else's fault. Taking responsibility is probably the most liberating thing I've ever done in my life. So it
is, right? And that's in every facet of our lives, and it's just this. And so it's funny, 5 years ago, if you would have heard this interview, you would have been like, yeah, that's not me. There's no way, you would have just talked yourself out of it and just walked away. Right.
Yeah. But it's crazy though. Cause the thing is my mother used to be a life coach, and I had all this confidence in my life, it's being pumped into me, but I wasn't acting that way. So there was a difference, in my mind, I'm like, this is where I should be, but my actions were not mirroring that, and that was a huge gap in my mind, and that was a real wake-up call to me. It's don't be deluded, fix this.
Yeah, and so I guess I didn't share this with you before the show, and I'll throw it out there now. So I actually know Neil Strauss, and
whoa,
yeah, so it's totally not what my podcast is about, but I've gone down the very similar path that you've gone down, or that you're going down. And it's funny, when I came across his book, it would have been 2010, and it's same type of thing. A couple of things. One, I hadn't dated at that point in my life in 20 some odd years, because I've been in a marriage, got out of a marriage, and last time I had dated was, when I was in high school or whatever. But, I saw the same thing, the peacocking, that Mystery did, magic tricks. Hell no, that wasn't me. But,
and it isn't 99% of people either. So I just don't.
Right.
I just see how broken that system is.
Yeah,
it does perpetuate a bit of and it's come to light now. This toxic masculinity that's out there, it does perpetuate that. And I've had the unfortunate pleasure of being in those groups, in those Facebook groups, and looking at the commentary and looking at the attitudes, and it's just something else.
It's horrible. It's really horrible. Yeah, and. One of the other things, just, when you have low self-esteem like that, and the sad thing is it does work, but you're getting a partner that has low self-esteem, and it's just you're not going to get anywhere in that relationship just because you're going to
That's right.
Yeah.
You just end up projecting. You just end up receiving whatever you're projecting in that space. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I see it time and time again. Yeah. And high quality women can smell it. They can smell it a mile away. A good lie detector. Probably the best lie detector in the world is a woman. So be careful. Be careful. You're never going to get it over on one. Not one you want anyway. So.
Yeah, and I did a lot of work with Neil for a couple of years. I was
a couple of years. Oh my god, amazing.
Yeah. So, not doing pickup stuff, but like self-improvement stuff like that. And I really liked when The Truth came out, because I think if you only read The Game and then you took the 7 years in between that and when The Truth came out, you're like, holy crap, is this the same person? Because not only was he vulnerable, but he was like, damn, none of this stuff is right. It's all about trying to find out who you truly are, not about manipulating and trying to win the other person over. So
and look, to his credit though, he was very, very frank in that book. He was, he gave both sides of the story, and look, he came in with his hands open, very vulnerable. He was very honest about his transformation. So look, he, by all means, at the end, he did say that it wasn't like he had to give it all up for the thing that he wanted, like the girl that he wanted eventually.
Right.
But he could see he totally see how it was damaging, extremely so.
Yeah.
So I think he knew. But he had to prove it. I don't know. In The Truth, it was kind of like, these are the results of all this stuff, because personally, and I think for most of the guys who do really, really well in our course, they get to a point and then it's like, what now? And what happens is we feel as if this is going to be the answer. We feel as like, okay, as soon as I can get the girl, then that's the last piece of the puzzle in my life. And what happens is that's not it. It's like you get to the top of that hill and it's not that it's not enough, but you realize that isn't the answer. And
it's not everything.
No, it isn't everything. And then what happens is people start, and especially myself, people start to turn and will get introspective and then start really, really working on themselves. Like next level self-awareness, which is what I realized had happened to me. Because, the things that don't matter. And you realize what those things are once you take away your ego, take away, the thing between your leg that seems to be making all the decisions for you in life. Yeah.
So Denzel, I guess maybe not even going back, but maybe now or over the last, 4 years or so, what do you think has kind of held you back in regards to becoming that best version of yourself? What's something that you kind of struggle with and you always have to push yourself through?
I personally, I don't know. I've always felt like if I like something, I kind of obsess over it, but I'm more of a sprinter than a long-term, than a marathon runner in the activities I do. I tend to go really hard for a few months and then fizzle out a bit and then come back to it. So I think the hardest thing for me is creating, that frequency and just making sure that I'm sticking to my timeline, sticking to my diaries. Because I have to say, I'm a bit of a whirlwind of a person. I just kind of come in and come out at 100 miles an hour, and it's tough because sustainability in any practice is what's going to be your long-term development, is what's going to really show you results. So that's probably my biggest drawback. And if you're on part of my podcast, which is Dating with Denzel, if you see that, you'll notice that if you don't even know when the next podcast is coming. It's very far in between. So, but I need to get on top of it, and it's just one of those things. It's a priority thing, really.
Well, what kind of systems do you have in place that do help you kind of keep on track? Or
Well, I got my diary, but I've also got my notes. I'm always my to-do list is the things that I have to do every single day. So I have to meditate. I have to go to the gym, even though the gym is probably, that's a sometimes a thing for me as well. But it's always in my to-do list. It's always there. And I also try and write things down next to my computer because I'm always on my computer. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't leave my computer hardly at all. So I'm with you. I'm with you there.
Yeah, that's right. And I also have my mantras as well. So it's not about just tactical things. It's what's that over and above, thing that you're looking forward to? What's that goal that is, you can sort of siphon every one of your micro goals and daily routines into that much larger, bigger bigger sort of quest, so to speak. If I'm trying not to be too dramatic there, but yeah, it's what is it that you want, for yourself in the next 5 to 10 years, like that big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like aligning those things. I think Tony Robbins, I got that from him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely. I think I love. Where do I want to be in 5 years, whatever, 10 years, and then work backwards. It's easy for me to do that. But if I were to not do that backwards step, it's just like a pie in the sky dream at that point. So,
it's crazy. Like I used to put dates on stuff.
Oh yeah.
I realized I could actually achieve them much quicker than I thought.
Totally. Yeah.
I think we put 5 years, so to not sort of suffocate ourselves and feel like, oh, it's too much pressure. But in reality, you don't it's crazy. Once you knock past one hurdle, the second one, third one, fourth one, it just becomes a rhythm in which you're overcoming things, and those little things that used to hold you back become insignificant to some extent.
So, just in regards to, like advice and books and, stuff like that, is there something out there that, just kind of sticks with you? Either a piece of advice that you've got or a book that you got that really changed you, or maybe the flips version of that, a book that you always recommend out to people?
One book that really sort of, I think social conditioning for a lot of guys, especially the sort of clients that we have, has really pushed upon them to be this nice guy, because being the hyper toxic masculinity male, right, that it's been sort of like pumped into us like that's a scary place to be, don't be that. And so what's happened is men have not really I don't know, through maybe not having a good male role model in their life, or for whatever reason, they're not a healthy version of what a male should be, right? And so this, and we do get a lot of introverted guys, but I'm not saying that's all of them. But what happens is, like, a lot of guys don't know why they're attractive. They don't understand what their brand of attractiveness is. They don't understand their worth in the eyes of a woman, right? And in a lot of ways, it's about owning your own masculinity and your own self. And a really good book that just put a mirror up to me and made me really, like, I think maybe love myself a little bit more, and the things that come naturally to me, was The Way of the Superior Man.
Oh yeah, I've actually have done work with him too.
There you go.
Data, yeah. That is cool. I was gonna wonder if some of the words you were using. I was wondering if you're going to go with "No More Mr. Nice Guy."
I have read that book as well. So this is the thing. I really understand, and look, I've had to do research in that space, mainly because I need to understand where my clients are coming from and how they can learn the best way, and how I can connect with them the best way. Because my level of energy is just not everybody's level of energy. So sometimes I got to really drop it down so I can connect with my clients. But Way of the Superior Man, it just really just got me at my core. It was just, and it's something that I knew, I think subconsciously, because, I grew up in a house where my mother was constantly playing salsa music, and, everyone danced with everyone, and that sort of energy was always free flowing. And like, I understood it, like it resonated with me. I really got it. And I was just like, why am I now so far away from that? I think we drift in through life. We drift into this space where, I know, maybe if I was back in sort of like a South American culture, I was living in Venezuela or Colombia or Cuba or something like that, maybe I wouldn't have these hang-ups. Yeah. So I think just diving back into that book just allowed me to go, well, yes, there is a masculine and feminine energy, and I needed to learn how that dance worked again, to some extent. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you. I don't know if it's because we get beat up, meaning like, after relationship after relationship after failed relationship, that we just kind of give up. You mentioned role models. My wife and I talk about this, I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Friends.
Yes.
Okay. So, you've got three guys. You got Joey, who is a womanizer. You got Ross, who he gets married 3-4 times in that show, but he's a pushover. And Chandler, like, he's a pushover. And you're just like, if that's the role model that men have to look up to, none of those are good examples.
No.
So where do you get someone? And I don't know what it's like there in Australia, but here in the U.S., divorces are so high. Fathers are typically not in the picture, so it's just, and not just boys, but kids are being raised by television and video games.
Well, that's right. It's social conditioning, 100%.
Yeah.
Men don't want to have those conversations, and that's the biggest problem. Women can have the conversations, and they're amazing communicators. I fundamentally believe women are far more superior than men in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, and I think it's because they own their vulnerability and are able to get past those internal struggles. I think men, what we do is we just batten down the hatches and we just brood it. We really just let it, fester inside of us without venting it out there. So like, here in Australia, we've got a 70% to 30% male to female suicide rate ratio. And I have to believe that's got something to do with, just men's inability to communicate their problems.
Yeah, I've had a guest on the show that is working there in Australia about the suicide rate. It's phenomenal how dire it is. Yeah.
And it's just, we just don't give men the permission, right, to be vulnerable. And I think this whole man up mentality that we in this society that we live in is damaging. It's very, very damaging. The phrase itself is just like, man, what does that mean? Eat your feelings? No thanks. It's like we're not lumberjacks. We're not going to fight in a war. Like we're not those people. We have to serve as functioning people in this society. Like we can't just be like that. So, and unfortunately, violence is a really big way in which men feel there's an outlet, and that sucks.
Yeah, totally, it is. Yeah. I've mentioned this before, I grew up in Texas, so, fighting was so normal, like it was just, if you didn't do it, you were kind of looked down upon, and
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. No. Yeah. So, it's look, that happened. That was my upbringing. That was there. It wasn't as prevalent, but it was definitely there. And I think, guys just want release, I was at a concert last night, actually, with my father to see a band called Government Mule, and the music was amazing. It's a little bit of rock, but a lot of blues, and I think what's his name? Lucas. Oh no, I'll get back to you. Sorry, it was a support act that it was pretty famous, but I can't remember. Anyway, that's besides the point. But the majority of the people there were men. It was like 95% men, and I think I think guys are constantly looking for releases in things, but like. Yeah, it's weird how the male expression just we want to vent, but we don't know how.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, earlier on you were talking about meditating. You've got a couple of some mantras. Occasionally, you'll go to the gym.
Well, it needs to happen more.
No, I get you, man. I do. So I guess kind of two things. One. Talking about venting, what do you do around that, venting, as well as, what do you have for personal habits that you feel, perpetuate you and, help you continually grow?
I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of personal development. I make sure that it's always sort of around. I started seeing a psychologist about 2 years ago just for mental maintenance. And that having that soundboard has just having that perspective from a professional has just absolutely given me such clarity upstairs. Because in the majority of us, I think we're just strangers on our own homes when it comes to our minds. Society tells us to look good and be fit and stuff like that, but no one tells us, well, actually, your mental health is probably the key to your actual happiness. Because self-awareness equals what do I want in life, right? And knowing what that is, and then having that clarity to then pursue it. So I don't know. I just didn't want to be like, I don't know. I had a small insomnia that I had to deal with at the time. Yeah. And so I went to see her because I thought I think maybe I'm holding on to a few grudges here and I didn't understand what was going on. So we sort of cleared that up and I kind of got addicted to it. I'm not saying I'm codependent on her, but it is just a mental fitness, I think. So that was probably habitually one of the best things I've ever done for myself.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I've got the same thing, and I think it's good just a sounding board and to get someone that's not in your life to just they know just enough about you, and they can kind of like they're looking through the window, right? So
yeah. Oh, and also as well, they won't put up with your shit, right?
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah,
I hope they don't. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they don't put up with the shit. And what happens when you start getting that clarity within yourself and your own triggers? Guess what? You're not doing anymore. You're not projecting onto your relationship. You're not causing problems,
Right.
and then saying it's the relationship's fault. You actually again take responsibility of the things that are you, and then you're able to sort of divide those things a lot better.
But Denzel, you've already shared a lot with us, and I'm going to kind of bounce back to something earlier. When I said if you were able to listen to this episode 5 years ago, let's say there's a client out there.
You're just breaking up on that one. You're gonna have to repeat yourself.
Yeah, let's say there's a client walking down the street, right, and they're hearing this today, and they're like, "Oh man, that's just so far beyond where I'm at right now." What kind of advice would you give them to get started on? Self-improvement or just building that confidence?
Okay, so number one, you need to. There's so many things out there. I think if you're young and you don't know, you haven't experienced much in life. Like I think this is a great time for you to just go out there and taste things. I think when you're younger, you don't have too many demons. Yeah. So you probably haven't experienced that rock bottom yet. There's a few things you haven't experienced. So look, I think understand that your energy is very infectious and people will respond to the energy of youth really, really well. And I feel like maybe just for those guys, the younger guys, just pull the trigger as constantly as you can. Like go up, talk to that person, go for that job, ask questions, just be as engaging as you can because people will give you so much leeway because of your youth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's really the gift of youth, and I understand now why people say the youth is wasted on the young. Because I understand how valuable it is, and just for the people around you. Like I think I just like being around young people, so it's crazy. That energy is infectious. For as you get older, my advice would change. Yeah, you start getting a bit more clarity as to the things that you want. But the main thing would be, and this I heard this. Probably about a year ago on a Russell Brand podcast, chase your monsters, otherwise they will chase you. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely love that line. I love it. Because it's not just your demons, it's not just the things that are holding you back that you need to pursue, but the things that you want to do, So if you don't chase the things that, you really want in life, eventually the regret will haunt you. Yeah. So it's a double pronged thing there. And I absolutely love that. I just feel like that's such a big motivator for me. It's like, you're either going to be on the front foot attacking it or it's going to catch up to you eventually.
Yeah, no, that's a great quote, and I completely agree with that. Yeah, like it's just going to eat away at you because it's always going to be there. That voice in the back of your mind just eating away.
Yeah. So, like, when are you going to do that? Is that today? Is that tomorrow? Is that is that be 50 years time in your retirement village? Like, like you got to put things into perspective because here forever.
Well, I'll put you sent me a lot of links, and I'll put them all in the show notes, Facebook and everything like that. But for those that will only hear this and not go out and read everything, what's the best one way to get in touch with you?
Oh, look, my Facebook page probably. Yeah. So
okay.
So facebook.com/on-call-wingman. And just message me through that way.
Awesome.
Otherwise, if you're probably listening to the podcast now, I'm also I have a podcast called Dating with Denzel. So.
All right, great. Yeah, I'll put all that in the show notes and share that out there. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you'd be remiss that we didn't discuss?
Look, I think because what you know in regards to the dating scene and whatnot, I think there's a bit of a misconception when it comes to pickup itself.
Totally.
Yeah, I think because the majority of guys out there who are executing under the guise of pickup, they're not doing a lot of good things. Yeah. Sure, the tactical stuff works, but how are we affecting guys and girls on a core level? Where's that? I know. Like, if you feel like you're learning stuff and you wouldn't tell your mother or your sister, that's telling you something. Yeah. So I think if anyone is looking for advice or looking to get into this space, like, use your instincts, use your gut. And if it feels like this is not the right thing you should be doing, like if it feels like, if this feels a bit, what's the word? It doesn't feel ethical. You're probably right. You're probably right. Yeah. So that's probably a big thing that I would like to put out there, because there's just a lot of charlatans out there.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. I'll put that in the summary of the show when I do my takeaways. I've got I have a lot of experience, but I've met a lot of people in the industry, and yeah, definitely there's some you got to stay away from. So, well,
yeah, 100%.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us, and some of the tips, tricks, and hacks that you've got. And I had a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. My pleasure.
I enjoyed chatting with him. That's some of my background too. Just the whole going through, learning how to be more vulnerable as a man, and just being who I was. That was pretty important, and I love a lot of the stuff that he talked about. Just and the honesty that he shared with us. He was talking about having this to-do list, his diary, meditation, mantras, and when he said gym, he kind of chuckled because he's like, yeah, I probably don't go as often as I should. But that just goes to show it's not all about like everyone's got this fantastic checklist and everyone's doing everything on there every single day. But anyway, I love just that level of vulnerability, and that he's always just trying to up-rev his life, trying to get to that next level. So, I enjoyed the show, and, thanks, Denny, for coming on.
Thanks for listening to the UpRev Ninja podcast with your host, Tom Hudson. Navigate to our website at uprev.ninja today, where you will find additional resources to help you discover the best version of you. While you're there, join our newsletter and join the discussion on your favorite social media platforms. We've got some awesome guests lined up to share with us how they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Again, thank you for listening. Now it's time to go out and uprev your life.
This week's review comes from Paul D. Johnson. Reveals wisdom and actionable inspiration. As host of the God Zone Show podcast, I appreciate the deep dive conversation journeys that Tom takes his guests on to reveal valuable wisdom and actionable inspiration. If you haven't, please head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review for the show. By doing so, this helps the show get noticed by more listeners and helps spread the word of how to discover the best version of yourself. Also, if you have any feedback about the show or a guest that you would like, please go to my website, https://uprev.ninja, and contact me.